Well, good afternoon, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. I am having some reports right now that some people are unable to get on the Zoom. So we'll give it just another minute or two here. Hopefully we've got this, this issue resolved and we'll get started here. I feel like we need to have background music. I'll keep that in mind in the future. Okay. All right, well, I think they're getting that taken care of on the back end. Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be doing an overview of career visioning. And career visioning is one of the most popular KW courses for top agents and mega agents, because it's at some point in our business, it's no longer about learning how to generate more leads. It's about growing our business through others. And we reach a limit on how much one individual can actually do inside of their real estate business. And so then it's time to start looking for leverage. And leverage takes lots of different shapes and forms. Sometimes it's a system or a tool. And in career visioning, we're looking at people as leverage. So being able to bring people into your organization. And there's a lot that goes into that process. And so we're going to start today by talking about that vision for your business and how you know you're there, how you know that that's the next step that you need to take. So who am I? Well, my name is Anna Kibble, and I'm the team leader at the Keller Williams in Lone Tree. I've been in the real estate industry now for 9 years. Yet I've been hiring people my entire professional career. I hired my first employee when I was 18, managing in restaurants. So I was this so much fun. I used to manage the graveyard shift at a restaurant and did that for many years when I was young. I don't think I could do it now. I hit 8 o'clock and I am, a zombie. So I've been hiring people for let's just say a really long time. I don't know how long it's been. And I've done it all different ways. I've hired people into my organizations in a very entrepreneurial manner, where I met somebody, I liked them. I thought that they had maybe good work ethic, or they had the right kind of skills for what I was looking for, and I brought them in. And I've used various processes for hiring. And I'll tell you that I've undoubtedly had better success bringing talented people into my businesses when I use a process to hire. And we're going to talk a little bit about what those processes are today. But, I've been hiring my entire professional career. Before I got into real estate, right around 10 years ago, as I was wrapping up my career in retail management, I was relocating retail stores. And in 2009 and 2010, during about a 12-month period, I hired more than 250 people in the process of opening all of these stores. Lots of that temporary work, also store managers and full-time employees and the whole gamut. And one of the things that I've learned through that is that there's a different process when you're bringing people into your organization, depending on the type of relationship you want to have with them. If you're looking at bringing part-time or temporary or less engaged people into your business, then there's a quicker process. But when you're looking to get into business long-term with somebody, then there's a really concrete a more substantial path to make sure you're getting into business with the right people. And so that's what career visioning is. So we look at all of the moving pieces of our business so that we can best determine when we need to hire. And then we look at all of those moving pieces again, so we can determine who we need to hire. And then we bring a system to that, so that we actually have a process in which we can bring people into our organization. I've been working with real estate agents and consulting in this for the past, gosh, I'd say 5 or 6 years. And in some way, shape, or form, a very similar class used to exist in Keller Williams before career visioning came along, called Recruit and Select. And so I'm not exactly sure how many times I've actually been through this training myself. It's probably in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 between those two classes. I probably ought to check one of these days, but I find that every time I attend this training, I get a little something else out of it. I get something new for my business. And so today we're not able to dive really deep into all of the processes and all the conversations. We're going to, however, hit the important ones. And so when we finish up today, you'll have a good understanding of the overview of this process, and you'll be able to walk yourself through the exercise of determining who should be your next hire in your business and when will you know you're ready. So we'll accomplish that today, and then everybody who attends this course will have the opportunity to actually go through this process with me. So on a one-on-one basis, we'll sit down and I'll actually take you through the whole career visioning process so that you can see what it looks like. And we're going to go through all of the different interviews and kind of share with you some of my insights and tips and tricks and what I'm listening for inside of interviews and all of those pieces. So that will be the follow-up to this, because of course we've only had 2 hours today to cover a handful of material. So let's jump in. The biggest investment we make in building our real estate businesses, it's not our signs, it's not our branding. The biggest investment we'll ever make in building our businesses past a certain point is in others, is in leverage and bringing people into our business. That's why it's so important to make sure that you're following a process and you're not shortcutting this big investment in your business. When we skip steps inside of this process, we may end up hiring somebody who's not really a great fit for the vision we have in our business. And there's a concrete cost involved with that as well. If you go through this course in real life, or you've been through like Recruit Select in the past, there's actually an exercise, and I'll introduce this exercise to you if you want to write this down and maybe go through it on your own time. What would be the cost of a bad hire? If you brought someone into your business and they just weren't the right fit for the role, right? And that's not a personal judgment. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're not the right person for that role, or that's not the right role for that person. What could be the cost of that? What's the impact on your actual business, on your systems, on your tools, on your models? What's the cost on your database, on your customer service? What's the cost on missed business opportunity because you've got somebody inside of your business who's maybe not performing the way that they should, or is damaging your reputation? You can really go down the list here, and the cost of making a bad hire in your business can become monumental. Not to mention the fact that you're going to put time, energy, and effort into finding that person, into bringing them into your business, into training them, and you don't get to recover any of that if it turns out they're not the right fit. So my suggestion is that you put that time investment in on the front end and making sure that they're the right fit before you put that time investment in on the back end as you go through this. And so how do you know? How do you know it's time to make that investment? And so let's take a look at some of those pieces too. Also a reminder for everybody's that's here. If you have questions, comments, or ahas, you can go ahead and use the chat box for those. We'll be looking at that periodically to get through those pieces. If you want to jump in at any point, ask a real direct question or share a pertinent experience to that, you're welcome to unmute your microphone and to jump in as well, so that we can kind of have some collaborative dialogue through this as well. That's the interesting thing about these Zoom trainings, is sometimes I'm not entirely sure if I'm moving too fast or anything like that. So if I'm talking too fast or moving too fast, or we want to revisit something, feel free to either raise your hand, which I think is an option in here, or unmute your microphone and just go ahead and stop me. I don't mind that at all. So let's take a look at this. How do I know I'm ready to bring people into my business? Sorry, I've got a lot of different windows here that I think I can move. There we go. How do I know that I'm ready to bring people into my business? And so, you know, the first thing that I would do if I were consulting you on your business is I would want to draw out what your business looks like, and I would probably use the models that are in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, or the MREA, to start with that. And so we would start looking at your business in regards to your goals. And when we look at your business in regards to your goals, we're looking at your economic model. Ooh, this is going to be fun. Okay. How's my handwriting, by the way? Is that doing okay? Is that fun stuff? Awesome. So we're going to look at your economic model. What does that mean, your economic model? Well, your economic model is how you take your goals and then you break that into all of the subsets of what you need to reach your goals, and you come up with your activity. Here's an example of a real estate agent's economic model. My goal may be to have 100 transactions this year. Okay, my goal might be to, let's put this in Millionaire Real Estate Agent terms. I don't know how to get back to this. There we go. Put this in Millionaire Real Estate Agent terms. What if my goal is to make $1 million in a year? Well, then I'm going to do the backwards math. Say, okay, if my goal is to make $1 million this year in real estate, what do I have to do to make $1 million in real estate? Well, I know that my average commission is, you know, let's just for fun say $10,000, right, is my gross GCI. So I need to close 100 transactions at that $10,000 commission, right? And if so much of my business is buyers and so much of my business is sellers, let's say that it's split right down the middle and I do 50-50. Well, then I know that half of my deals need to be listings. So I'm going to close 50 listings this year. So if I'm closing 50 listings a year, I probably am not going to sell every single home that has a sign in its yard, right? There might be one or two where the sellers may be unreasonable about the price, or the conditions just not right, or COVID-19 happens and we have property that doesn't sell. Perhaps it sits on the market. So what is my conversion percentage there? So if I'm going to sell 50 listings, maybe I'm a really, really top-notch listing agent and 80% of my listings sell. So I'm going to say I need to actually take 60 listings taken. Okay, so if I'm going to take 60 listings this year, Well, I'm probably going to have to sit at some kitchen tables, right? I might have to sit at more than 60 kitchen tables because let's face it, no matter how good you are, if you've got 100% conversion rate, it simply means you're not going on enough appointments, right? So the best of the best is probably getting 3 out of 4 when they sit at kitchen tables. If you've got a high repeat and referral business, it might be a little higher. But I'd say most people are going to be, at that 75% or more. And so for the sake of making math easy here, let's say I'm a so-so listing agent. I'm better than average, right? And I take 60% of the appointments I go on. 60% of the time when I'm across the table from a seller, they say, yes, list my house. So I have to actually go on 100 listing appointments. So I've now created my economic model. And if I divide this up by month, I know that I need to go on 9, ooh, that moves, 9 appointments a month to be able to make my $1 million a year. That's my economic model. Now, when I broke down this economic model, I was missing the other side of the transaction. We didn't capture how many buyer appointments we needed to go on. Chances are pretty good that math is going to add up, and I also need to have 100 buyer appointments this year. So that means over the course of the year to bring in a net $1 million into my, or a gross $1 million into my business, I'm going to have to go on 200 appointments. Divide that by, say, 40 working weeks a year, right? And you need to go on, 5 appointments a week to make that happen. Is this a number that's realistic for you? That's where we start. Are you singularly able to achieve all of the activities necessary to hit your goal? If the answer is no, then we need to start looking at leverage. If the answer is yes, I can go on all those appointments, but I'm not going to be able to do the marketing anymore. Heck, I'm not going to be able to organize my lead generation anymore. I can still set appointments and I can still go on appointments. I can still negotiate contracts. I can still do all of my major roles inside of this business, but everything else is going to fall off my plate. Then you need leverage. Then you need a person in your organization. And this might not be your number. Maybe your number looks different, but this is how we're going to start that conversation. We're going to take a look at your economic model. And from there, we're going to further dive into your lead gen model. This will allow us to see what type of help do you need in your business. If you've identified here that you need to hire somebody, we're going to break down your business and say, okay, what is that person going to do? And it starts with your lead generation model. And your lead generation model tells us that for every phone call you make, this is the likelihood that they will become one of these closings. Okay. For every appointment that you're able to set, what's the likelihood they're going to become one of those closings? And so our lead generation model helps us to prepare all of the steps we need throughout the course of a year to ensure that that number happens. So if I need to go on 100 listing appointments this year, well, I'm very likely going to have to be in touch with more than 100 people, right? If I make 100 phone calls and every single one of those people says, yes, come sit in my kitchen table and tell me about listing my house, or yes, come hop on a Zoom with me and tell me about listing your house, right? Then you live in a world I don't, because that's not my experience in real estate, right? We're going to know people who have to do real estate transactions. We're going to be talking to past clients. We're going to be working with our sphere. We're going to be developing new relationships through our lead generation efforts. And so that lead generation model means how many people do we need to have in our database, and what do we need to be doing with them inside of our database? And so if all of our business were coming from inside of our database, we would look at it this way. If I need to go on 200 appointments this year, so that I can reach my goals. I can actually determine how many people I need to have regular contact through my database with by extrapolating my goal. Okay, so 200 people or 200 appointments for every, what's the math on this? How do I draw this out? For every one of these 200 appointments, I need to have 10 people in my database, essentially. So that means I'm going to need to have 200 appointments this year. I'm going to need to have a 2,000 person database that I'm having regular communication with. And that regular communication can be various methods. If you read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, that model includes the 33 touch program, which we now know in current research is actually 36. So it's 36 points of contact over the course of a year. And this will vary from calls, texts, emails, client appreciation events, or other event invitations, be this seminars or real estate related events, networking events, things of that nature. So we're able to work that backwards. Once we know what it takes to actually generate the leads we need to have the business we're looking for, we can work that into the budget. And we start looking at our budget model. And so in that budget, we're going to aim for a 30, 30, 40 split of the budget. And that's the goal we're looking for when we bring somebody into our business. And what is that 30, 30, 40? That first 30 is your cost of sales. Your cost of sales is going to include anything that you're paying your brokerage per transaction. So if you're paying a split or flat fee, that cost of sale is going to include when you hire an agent onto your team, they're going to have a split from you for that transaction. So that cost of sale is going to include that split to that real estate agent. Any other costs that are only procured when you close business. So this would be a transaction coordinator or something like that. If you don't actually close business, you're not paying those costs. And then we're looking at 30% expenses. Now, expenses are going to include everything from that listing, marketing, and yard signs to what you're paying for your technology every month. It also includes the cost of salaries. So if you have hired an administrative person or an operations manager or somebody like that, a marketing manager, if you have a transaction coordinator who is a part of your team and isn't compensated at closing but receives regular compensation, then that would fall into this 30% mix too. And then that 40 ideally becomes profit in your business. So the goal is to be able to structure compensation plans so that it fits inside of this, and your budget supports your lead generation model, which supports your economic model, so that everything's in line. So, when your business grosses $1 million in gross commission income a year, you're bringing home at least 40% of that, right? You're putting at least $400,000 into your pocket as profit from your business, and this isn't including any of the associated salaries. Which brings us to, of course, who is that person? And so this is the organizational model. How would you structure this, and who is the person that's going to be there? And then once you've determined what your organizational model is inside of your business, you're able to revisit your economic model and say, okay, if my organizational structure looks like this, what can I actually achieve in my business? Where would these numbers be realistic? And then I can use that as a forecast instead of a goal setting tool. So I can use it in the front end as a goal setting tool. Here's what I want to have happen in my business. Now I need to build my business around it. And now once I've built out my business, I can say, okay, based on what I've built, I can use the math and the economic model to say, here's what I can expect from what I've built inside of my business. I don't know how to get back to this. I'm sorry, guys. I'm learning. Here we go. I think I just do that. There we go. Now can you see my slide instead of the whiteboard? No, still seeing the whiteboard? Oh, not whiteboard, slides. There we go. Now we're good? Seeing my slides instead of the whiteboard? Cool. So here's an example of an organizational chart. Depending on the different business that you're running, you're going to, your organizational chart is going to look different. On the left side of the page would be a brokerage business. So in our brokerage businesses, we have a group of investors. That group of investors has a spokesperson whom we call the operating principal. That operating principal then leads inside of the market center the team leader who oversees the associate business and the operations of the market center through the market center administrator or the MCA, and then all of those funnel up. In your agent business, you wear all of these hats until one day you don't. And so those hats could be operational, they can be lead generating, you can be the CEO of your business, and all of those things at once. And so what you see here, this is an example of what they call in the MREA a 7th level business, which means simply that you're removed from daily operations. You've hired somebody to run your business in your place, and that person's identified by the CEO. This frees you up to either pursue passion projects, pursue additional businesses, or to expand your business into other locations. And so you see the director of expansion reports directly to you there as well. And so that would allow you to almost franchise your efforts into other geographic locations, right? And so that's an endeavor that's challenging to do when you're still wearing the CEO hat of your business, and it can happen. So there are different ways that that you can look at the org chart. And so let me do this. I'm going to let me draw it out again. There we go. I'm going to clear all of this. Okay, so when you start out in real estate, this is your organizational chart. It is just you. And so you do all of the things. You do all of the admin. You do all of the marketing. You do all of the lead gen. You do all of the contract work. Right? It's just you. And then we start bringing in leverage. And so here's the next organizational chart. So it's you, and then you bring in your first admin. And so now you are still doing all of that lead generation. You might still be doing some of the marketing, but your first admin is doing all of your organizational pieces. They may be taking over the marketing. All of your admin, that's why they're called an admin, right? They're taking all of those pieces off your plate, right? So your job just changed, and now you're able to focus more on lead generation, working directly with buyers and sellers and clients, right? Because that administrator took the majority of the things off your plate. The next step for most of us is to actually hire a second admin. That second admin is going to also take over your transaction coordination and your marketing. And all I have left here is lead generation and working with clients, working with buyers and sellers. When I've hired my first admin and subsequently my second. Now, because I'm able to focus predominantly on lead generation, I have more leads than I can handle. And that's when I would bring on my first agent. And that agent could work with buyers or sellers or both. And so they're also going to be doing some lead generation and working with buyers and sellers. Okay. Now, when it's just me, when do I earn the opportunity to hire my first admin? That's a variable question. If we strictly follow the book, the answer would be once I'm doing 36 transactions a year. I think that that number is variable, and we're going to want to go through those exercises we just went through first, right? What does your economic model say? What does your lead generation model say? What does your budget support? And then we can base your org chart off of where you want to go inside of your business, right? So you at 36 transactions, according to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, you can do this all by yourself. You might hire some piecemeal leverage, like a transaction coordinator who just gets paid at closing and isn't your employee, a marketing person who's just doing some open house flyers every here and again, right? So you might hire some piecemeal leverage there, but at about 36 transactions a year, the book says you're ready to hire your first admin. And when you do that, when you hire your first admin, you should be able to double your business. So they should be able to bring you in another 36 transactions a year. And at that point, you're at 72 deals a year. And this person is feeling the heat, right? They're probably really overwhelmed with some of the administrative tasks. So then you bring in the second admin. That second admin may add another 36 to your business. Let me put this over here. Another 36 transactions to your business. And that's when you're over 100 transactions a year and you likely do not have the bandwidth to meet with both buyers and sellers at that point. So a lot of agents will start with a buyer's agent here. You may also, instead of an agent, you may also at this point here, stop erasing, there we go. At this point here, you may also bring in a showing assistant. So you are still they're showing property on your behalf as a cost of sale. So they're getting compensated at the close of the transaction as well. So that's another path there, bringing that showing assistant on. If you find that your admin is really capable of handling this workload, that yet you're running out of time to work with all of your buyers and sellers, you may add a showing assistant at this point. They're kind of a variation in the model. This gets you to what most call your small real estate business, your true small business inside of real estate, right? It's the 4-person business that all of the other businesses are built off of. And from here, you can continue adding agents and depending upon the way your business is structured, your systems and your support, you'd be adding 2 agents and another admin, 2 agents and another admin. And that administrative support could be anything from an ISA, somebody who's making calls and setting appointments. It could end up being somebody who's a lead manager who's really just managing that workflow of leads and allowing people to lead generate. Could be an additional marketing person. It could be somebody who's just running listing marketing, and then somebody who's just running buyer marketing. It could be somebody who's just doing social media marketing. The details on that really pertain more to how you're operating your business. than to what's in the book. So that's why we start with that first piece and really taking a look at what are your goals in your business and how are you structured and how are you set up. So, one of the big questions that I often get is, why? Why would I hire an assistant when I can do 36 transactions myself and I can piecemeal out some of these other jobs? Why would I go so far as to hire an assistant or bring other agents inside of my business? What's in it? What's in it for me? And so we want to also look at that piece. What's in it for you? Are you growing for growth's sake, or is there a real tangible benefit to bringing people into your business? And so let's look at this. So let's just assume, for argument's sake, that our average commission is $10,000, right? I'm gonna grab my calculator, because I'll tell you I don't have this math memorized, even though I probably should. So we're gonna do it together. So $10,000 an hour. It may look different in your business, but when experts have broken down that real estate transaction, they say it takes about 50 hours to go from start to finish with an individual. Now, this is for the lead generation. This is in the follow-up period. This is during the showing or staging process when you're getting ready to list. This is through the under contract phase. This is through all of those pieces until you get to the closing table. Just a show of hands really quick, and let me see if I can see everybody. You can hop in the chat box too. Does this sound fair? Is this about what it takes to go through a real estate transaction? About 50 hours or so. Jason, your world's probably a little different, right? And you can tailor this math to your business and what you're doing. So let's take a look at this here. For argument's sake, let's say, 50 hours. So I'm bringing home 10,000 divided by 50 hours. What's my dollar per hour here? Awesome. I just made $200 an hour. How's my handwriting? Maybe I typed this instead. Are we following? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just made $200 an hour for doing 50 hours worth of work. When I move to that first hire inside of real estate, right? I'm bringing on an admin or an operations manager. Let's say I'm paying them $20 an hour. I think that's kind of the start of an industry average. It might be a little more, it might be a little less. So I've got that same $10,000, right? But I've identified that operations manager or admin is going to take everything off of my plate except for lead generation and working directly with the buyer and seller. You know what? Let me back up, because there's a piece of leverage we forget here. Most of us don't start there. Most of us don't start with an assistant. Most of us start with a transaction coordinator. Anybody else start with a transaction coordinator? It's a really smart piece of leverage because you're just paying at the closing table, right? And so what does that TC cost? Maybe 300 bucks? Hey, that's not 300. Let's try this again. So now we're at $9,700 that I've made for this transaction, but I didn't put 50 hours worth of work in, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say 10 hours is the lead gen. 10 hours is the admin. 10 hours is the follow-up. 20 hours is what happens when we're under contract, right? All of the dates and deadlines and forms and paper pushing around and all of those pieces. Well, what did I do? I just took 20 hours out of the equation. So now my dollar per hour is not divided by 50 hours. It's divided by 30 hours. So now let's look at this. Just by hiring a transaction coordinator, I go from $200 an hour to $323 an hour. Was that worth my $300 in the transaction if I just got 20 hours of my life back? Like for most of us, the answer is yes. So that's really easy leverage. It's really easy for us to take that step in our business. And then we go through and we make that higher. So we've got the $10,000 commission. We're minusing our transaction coordinator, so we're at $9,700. Let's say we hired an admin, and they're going to take all of that follow-up and all of those administrative tasks off of our plate. So that's 20 more hours of work, and we're paying them $20 an hour. So we're gonna pay that admin $400 for their work towards that closing, right? So now we're at $9,300. But how many hours did we actually work? 10 hours of lead gen, right? And that's lead gen and let's say showing property too, right? Because they didn't take that off our plate. So now we just jumped to $930 an hour. If the ceiling you've hit in your business is that you can no longer do all of these pieces, your admin, your follow-up, and your transaction piece, the return on your investment should free you up enough to do enough business to use those hours more wisely somewhere else. And then your return on that activity, when you look at it from $1 per hour, is incredible. Right? So why hire an admin? Why would I take that step? Well, this is why. This is the big piece. If you're hitting a ceiling because you know you need to do more, this is where you know you can move forward in your business. Now, here's an interesting question. What's in it for the agent you're going to bring on next? Because like I mentioned, they're going to pay a split, right? They're going to actually, you're going to pay them a split for doing that work, working with buyers or working with sellers. So what are they doing inside of your business? If you've hired them after this, then let's look at this. Same $10,000 commission. And I'm going to just go ahead and use this. So when I bring in a buyer's agent, or just an agent into my business, here's what I can expect from that. And here's the value that they get without me offering anything else, just the administration and organizational structure of my team. Here's the value that they get. So 10,000, and then what do? Split. So let's just say this is a 50-50 split. So I'm going to make, out of that transaction, I'm going to make 5,000. And my agent's going to make 5,000 as well. However, I'm the one paying the TC. I'm the one paying the admin. So I'm now at what? 4,300. Is going to be my net after those pieces, right? But my agent's not doing that. My agent's not paying the TC. My agent's not paying the admin. So their net is that 5,000. They don't have the overhead there. And let's say that I started some of the lead gen, but that agent was really the one who took it over, converted the appointment, and showed the property. So maybe I have 5 hours in this, and so does my agent. So what's that 4,300 divided by that 5 hours? I'm now $860 an hour. And my agent is at $1,000 an hour. So we hear it all the time, right? I don't want to pay that split. I feel like I'm giving up so much. What am I really paying you for? Here's the value. Here's what they're paying for. They're paying to be able to work inside of your organization, inside of your business. And as a return on that, they're getting highly leveraged activities, which allow them to go and do more of what they probably wanted to do to begin with, which is work directly with people, work directly with buyers and sellers, work directly inside of the real estate transaction, not do the marketing, not do the admin, not do the under contract follow-up. Maybe they don't even want to generate the lead, but they can convert it. If you give me somebody who's interested in real estate, I can get an appointment with them. Perfect. Here you go. And so this is off of a 50-50 split. You could do this math any way that you choose to structure the compensation plan inside of your business. And in fact, if we were sitting down today and we were going to have a conversation about the compensation plan in your business, we'd go through an exercise like this. We would look at, okay, what is the value that you're providing? And we would list out all of the different things that are happening inside of your business, and what is it that you're paying for and taking off of their plate? Is it going to be the tools? Is it going to be the administrative support? Is it going to be the transaction coordination? Like, what is that piece? And allow somebody to go and do more so that they can earn a higher dollar per hour. In fact, with this math here, you'll actually see that your agents on your team may end up with the highest dollar per hour earned. That is until you get higher up in your organization, where you're literally spending, 1 hour in your business or 2 hours in your business, and they're spending 5 or 6, right? So that's where that swings. But when you're starting out bringing leverage in and bringing agents into your business, they may actually have a higher dollar per hour than you. And that's one of the values that you provide. And you can do this math with them and show them, okay, to be an individual real estate agent, do you remember where we're at? As an individual real estate agent, your dollar per hour was $200. Here I am offering you the opportunity to make $1,000 per hour. Which one would you rather do? So it makes that a really an easy conversation when you can identify your value like that. I know we moved really fast here. Any questions in this? Anybody, you're welcome to hop off mute or hop into the chat box if you need to. What do you think about this?
Still gathering my thoughts. Hang on. I was something was gonna come out and I'm still processing. Hold on. So when you did this math, you did per transaction.
Yep.
So if you're increasing the number of, I might have just answered my own question.
Oh, good.
Because you're increasing the number of your transactions. So then you're making more because you're doing more business. Is it ever inappropriate to, instead of your first admin, have your first admin continue doing what they're doing and then bring someone in higher? Or should you do a promote from within?
When you're bringing in that second admin?
Yeah, because the first
Yeah.
admin, it makes talent more expensive, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and so and we're gonna go into that too. There's a lot of variables in there. It depends on how you have it structured in your business. It depends on what you have that first admin doing, and it depends on their level of talent and skill, and how quickly you're moving your business and where you want it to go. This person may be great at the things that you've given them, but really might not be a leader. May not have the ability to grow and develop others underneath them, may not be interested in that type of opportunity. So then your second admin might become their boss. Sometimes that happens, or eventually becomes that person's boss. I think in a perfect world, you would find that person you would hire as your first admin would, of course, be talent. Would be somebody who is highly skilled and highly capable, and also somebody who has leadership potential. And they could help develop that second admin's role. And eventually, as your organization grows, they would step up to become the operations manager or the lead admin. And in a lot of cases, this person can actually grow and replace you in your business because they're kind of on the ground floor with you, right? And so this first admin hire has the potential to become the CEO in your business. Now, that's not always the case, and sometimes that first hire that we make isn't that person, and maybe we know that ahead of time. Maybe we discover that over time. So I think there's some variables there, but in a perfect world, your first admin would be the future CEO of your company.
And then my next question, it goes agent, admin, buyer's agent or sales agent or whatever you do. And then it's one admin for two agents after that?
Yes and no.
Okay. I thought it was always one for one, so I'm just clarifying for what I thought I heard in the past. I don't know.
Yeah. Perfect. What else?
Anna, we talked just a little bit about in terms of determining when your business is really ready. What's the current? I'm assuming it's the same as that it's always been, right? Like one of the other things is you need to have 90 days of admin salary sitting in your bank account, right?
Yeah. And when you hire that person, you're making a 90-day hire, right? In that first 90 days, they're either going to prove that they've earned that job and have the opportunity to keep it going forward, or you're going to identify that they're not the right fit, and you're going to, as quickly as you've identified that, get out of relationship with them in your business, or get out of that relationship with them in your business, I would say, to be able to move forward. And that's, I wonder if we can go back here. Let me see. I think I saved some of my drawings. Let me see how in the world I go back to it, if that's a thing I can do. I don't know, maybe not. Oh, but there's different pages. Hey, that's something new I just learned. So when we were looking at that first piece, and it was, where's the, no? Okay, well, it's not letting me draw anymore. I'm not sure what I did. When we were looking at that first piece, and there were the four circles, right? It's you, it's admin, it's agent. There's at least a 90-day gap in between each of those hires, so that you can make sure before you move on to the next person that two things happen. That first hire has earned their job. You've determined that they are an appropriate fit for the role that you've hired them for. And the second piece is so that you can build up that reserve for the next hire. Now, when you start hiring agents, that looks a little different. And you're going to look at the need for that agent in your business from a lead generation perspective, and to to be able to service your existing business. You don't necessarily have to have a reserve when you bring on a buyer's agent or a sales agent or even a showing assistant that's getting paid at closing. You're going to look at some different metrics for that. That was a great point though, Ricky. Yeah, I would absolutely have 90 days in reserves set aside in my business, which is why this is such a pertinent time to be having this conversation. Because if you have 90 days of reserves for an admin in your business right now, today might not be the day to pull the trigger on that, unless we've gone through those other models and you really identified that that's necessary in your business. I think because there's a little bit of uncertainty over what's happening inside of our real estate market over the next several months, I wouldn't be really quick to pull the trigger today, even if I had that reserve in place. I might need that reserve for something else in my business. Okay.
What about virtual assistants? Do you just is a virtual assistant, whether it's part-time or full-time or whatever, kind of one of those ancillary pieces? And then are we talking like physical people in our office?
It depends. It depends on your model, and I think it depends a little bit on the compensation structure for them. I think it also depends upon the level of relationship that you choose to have with them, how much you want them to be in your business. A virtual assistant can be a great way to bridge the gap as well. If you know you need somebody for a short period of time while you're getting ready to hire somebody in the physical world, a virtual assistant can be great. They tend to be lower cost than a physical body, and they also depending on where you're sourcing your virtual assistant, there's probably less training involved because they're going to already be really familiar with what kind of support you're going to need in your business and how to do it. It's going to be the specifics of how you do that in your business that they're going to have to learn. But most of the real estate virtual assistant companies have people that are kind of right out of the box, ready to go. The safest type of virtual assistant to move forward with is the kind that you're paying on a piece by piece basis, right? I need this work done in my database, so go do this project. It's going to be X amount of dollars for a fixed period of time, and then we no longer have an obligation to one another. So that allows you to kind of play red light, green light with your project needs and your expenses, and can help you really get ready to bring an admin into your business. But I think that your first hire in your business could be either a physical or a virtual assistant. That virtual assistant who would become a solid piece of your business, you're still going to be vetting them in a similar way. Because you're going to want to make sure that you have a talented person who fits the culture inside of your business and has the right behavioral match to the job that you've created, should you want to be in relationship with them for a long period of time. So I think you could do either. And right this very moment, if you were hiring somebody, a virtual assistant would probably be a pretty good place to start. Because of our physical limitations as a society right now, but it would probably ease that training gap a little bit too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say I kind of went off on a little tangent on that one. I don't know if I answered your question. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, so okay, so we're going to use our tools. We're going to determine our organizational chart. We're going to determine that dollar per hour save, right? That we're earning, and that's going to help us make the decision as to how and when we want to move forward. And then we really want to take a look inside of our business and define the need for the next person we're hiring. Is it administrative help or is it agent support, right? Which part of the role or which part of the business are they going to be supporting you in? What's your vision for your business. So walking through some of the exercises that we went through earlier to determine the long-term vision for your business, we can start building out a future organizational model. And then we'd compare that to your current organizational model. Where are you at now, and who would be the next fit on top of that? And then, who does that person report to? For instance, like we had just talked about, if you're hiring admin number 2, are they going to report to admin number 1, or are they going to report directly to you? If you're hiring in a sales agent, are they going to report directly to you, or are they going to report to admin number 1? Right? How do you want that relationship to look? And then what is their job profile? What exactly are they going to do? This is a little easier to define on the agent side than it is on the admin side. One of the good news pieces is that KW's already built out job profiles for every single one of the seats that we look at on the organizational chart. So they have profiles for administrative assistants. They have profiles for operational managers. They have profiles for buyer's agents, for sales agents. They have profiles for showing assistants. They have profiles for expansion agents. They have profiles for every seat inside of your bus. So that's a great place to start. You can find those on KW Connect if you have KW credentials. If not, then talk to me directly and we can start looking at what those job profiles look like. You're going to want to know, what are the requirements for this job and the responsibilities? What are they going to do, and how do I know they're doing it well? Those are going to be questions you ask yourself. If in the next 90 days they only did this one thing and they did it really, really well, would it be worth me hiring them? That's going to be their main job, right? And then another big question is, if in the next 90 days, there's one thing that they don't do well, we've got to part ways. What would that be? These are great questions to ask yourself so you can start to identify what's really important inside of your business. And then who is this person? And I ask that question in the safest way possible, because when we are hiring somebody else into our business, there are rules we have to follow. We cannot discriminate on any of the protected classes. So age or race or creed or color or origin or religion or familial status or sexual preference or handicapped or disabled or goodness, they're just about all protected classes, right? We can't discriminate on those things. And so when I ask, who is this person, I'm not asking, are they young or are they old? Are they a man or are they a woman? But what I'm asking is, what is their behavioral profile? Who would be a good fit in this role? If it's an admin role, is this somebody who pays attention to detail, who moves with a sense of urgency? Is this somebody who has the ability to work on one thing for an extended period of time, who's comfortable with a sedentary job in an office environment that may not have a lot of variety, right? If I'm looking at the profile for an agent, am I looking at somebody who enjoys being with people, who naturally creates great social connections, who's a good networker? Am I looking for somebody who communicates well? Am I looking for somebody who has the schedule availability to, show homes on nights and weekends, or, to be available when our clients are? So who is that person? I like to say, if I could mold them out of clay, this is who they would be. And so it's a little project for your imagination to just kind of forward think, who would be really successful in this role? What would they do that creates that success? What would be the habits and skills that they bring to the organization? All the way down to, particularly if it's an administrative person in your business, they're going to be representing who you are and your culture with your clients. So you might even think of things like how do they answer the phone, right? Do they have energy? Are they answering with a smile? Do my people feel welcomed when they're reaching out to this individual? What is that environment that they've created inside of my business? So you're going to want to exercise your imagination here, to really set the vision for your business. Who is that person? And here's the interesting thing about that exercise in itself. Even if we're not looking at hiring somebody, imagining what another person would do with a role in our business can actually help us deliver that high level of service also, right? If I had an admin and they were doing my listing marketing, it would look like X, Y, and Z, and it would be done by this time and this time and this time. What you've just done is you've defined the standards for your organization. And the question I would ask you is, are those the standards that you're implementing in your organization now? And even if you're not ready to hire, could you up your game by implementing those standards into your business, right? That's a huge question, but knowing exactly what you want to happen and how you want it to be done allows you to create those standards, which will help you through that first 30, 60, and 90 days of determining whether or not that person is a good fit inside of your business. So definitely looking at that, and then based on where your organization is at, you've got to determine the level of talented individual that you're looking for. So somebody with talent essentially is somebody who has a track record of success. They've got a track record of showing up and being successful in whatever it is that they're doing. And that's the type of person you want to look for in your business. So there's 3 different levels of talent, and you're going to pay accordingly for these levels as well. So you've got somebody who's proven talent. This is the highest level of talent. They've already done what you're looking to do in your business. They've already done it, and they've proven that they're highly successful at it. This type of talent tends to be the most expensive because they're a couple of things. First, they're usually not looking for a job. They're probably already gainfully employed. And so the vision that you have for your organization, the vision that you have for your business, and the value that you provide is what's going to draw them to your organization. And so you'll have to be competitive inside of that to get into business with somebody who's proven talent. The next level of talent is somebody who is potential talent. Somebody who is potential talent has a track record of success inside of another role or another organization or another industry that could translate into what you're doing. So they've not necessarily been in the role you have before, yet they've been successful in something similar, and maybe this is a promotion type situation, and they've been inside of your business, and so you've seen their success inside of another role, and so you're promoting them up into a different role where you know that they're the potential for talent. They've got proven talent in another role, and so you're bringing them over to yours. This could be somebody who's attracted to your opportunity from another industry, who maybe has a similar role to what you've got, but it's not quite the same. So they're potential talent. They've got a proven track record, and they're proven talent in a different role or in a different industry. And then the next is emerging talent. Emerging talent is somebody who you've identified has a track record for success, even if it's not in something that corresponds to your business. It could be something incredibly different. Emerging talent is also somebody who fits that profile, and they identify with the behavioral traits of somebody who would be successful in that role. And so that could be somebody who's emerging talent. So this could be somebody who's, you know, brand new to the real estate industry, or even brand new to the job market, maybe right out of college or something like that, looking at emerging talent. And so emerging talent tends to be the most affordable of the talents, if you want to put it that way. They'll demand the least paycheck, and emerging talent might be out looking right now. They likely are. However, you may still be able to attract them with what you have going on in your organization. However, that emerging talent is going to need the most support from you to get started in your business. Whereas that proven talent has done it somewhere else before and they've seen success, so they're going to need minimal support to get up and running in your business. That potential talent will need a little more support from you to get up and running in the business, but you'll pay them a little less than proven talent as well. And then emerging talent, you'll end up paying them probably the least out of all of these, but they're going to need the highest level of support to adapt to your business. So, so I guess that old adage, you get what you pay for, is very true here. And so you're going to want to take that into consideration once you define the role that you're looking for and the budget you have available, as well as your ability to help that person move your business forward for the first 90 days. You'll be way more invested with that emerging talent as far as a time standpoint when you get there. Oh, cool. So thank you, Angela, for posting that 30, 60, 90 for the EA. That's oh, I just lost something here. That's a great resource on, here we go, on the KW site. So not only are there job plans and job descriptions, there's also those follow-up plans, what needs to happen in the first 30, 60, 90 days to see success. And all of those are customizable for you and what you're doing in your business. So, so here we are. We've done all of the legwork. We've analyzed our business. We know the best strategy for moving forward. We know the type of individual we're looking for. And we've gone so far as to identify what they're actually going to be doing and the behavioral profile of somebody who would be successful in this job, and the level of talent and the level of pay that we're looking to provide. So next, we follow the process. The important piece about following the process is that there is a system to follow when you're bringing people into your organization. And, it's not as easy as meeting somebody off of the street and thinking, oh, you might be a good fit in my business. Why don't you come on? Well, you could have success that way. I know from experience that I've had a lot more success when I follow an in-depth process. We're going to lay out for you here the career visioning process, which is a 4-step hiring process, recruiting and selection process. Excuse me. And here's what I would say. This process essentially is the same whether you're hiring an agent into your business or you're hiring administrative staff into your business. I wouldn't recommend skipping any of the steps, yet at the same time. What I would say is that your adherence to this process will match the level of relationship you want to have with this person in your business. So I know that some real estate teams are set up, excuse me, with a large number of agents to a small number of real estate admins. And one of the reasons they're set up that way is to allow for a lot of agent turnover. And what happens with that agent turnover is it's a vetting process on the back end instead of a vetting process on the front end. So they didn't. So there wasn't as strict of adherence to the process in the front end, which allows you to more quickly bring agents into your organization. right? So you're not vetting them as deeply, or you're really just kind of determining on the surface whether or not they're a good fit inside of your organization. And then they get into your organization and there's a higher level of turnover because all of that vetting is happening after they're already working with you. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's an option though, and it's something that you want to really be aware of when you're going into hiring somebody in your business. Is if you don't take the time on the front end, you're going to take the time on the back end, because they're going to be vetting themselves for your business once they get into it. So proceed with caution there if you're going to shortcut some of this process. However, I will tell you as we're going through this, what pieces I would pay the most attention to bringing an administrative person into my business, and the pieces I would pay the most attention to bringing in an agent into my business who's going to be working on that. So I'll kind of point out those pieces, those subtleties as we go through the process. And then when we sit down one-on-one, we can extrapolate on that a little bit, particularly as you're determining what the next hire is for your business. So no matter which direction you go or how strictly you're adhering to it, you're going to follow 4 steps in this process. The first is to screen this candidate, determine if they really even qualify to be in your organization, right? Do they have the track record or the experience that you're looking for? Do they seem like they have the personality and the culture to be able to actually apply for this job? And so in the screening process, you're going to be shopping for candidates, right? So through the screening process, you can be getting referrals from other small business owners, from your vendors, from your sphere of influence in your personal sales network, right? You can be getting referrals for people who might be a good fit. You can capture candidates through job posting websites like Indeed or Glassdoor, or even Craigslist. You can use social networks like Facebook and Instagram to post want ads for your business and to hire people through that. So you can really be collecting candidates a number of ways. I would recommend that you include the job description in that process so that people can kind of self-select. And those job descriptions are available on KW Connect for you to be able to personalize as well. Once you've determined that somebody could be a candidate inside of your organization, you're going to go through the interview process. We have 4 different in-depth face-to-face interviews that we're going to go over today to help you get to get a lot deeper with that candidate and see if they would indeed be a good fit for that role and for the organization. Then you'll gain perspective. You're going to allow outsiders to maybe poke holes in your candidate, to ask you some questions about it. You're going to get the perspective of others in this step. And then should you choose to move forward with this candidate, you're going to end up gaining commitment. Before you seal the deal, you want to make sure that you're on the same page with the expectations of the role, and you want to make sure that you're on the same page with the compensation in the role, and all of the other finer details before you move forward. All of that happens inside of that 4-step process here. So we start with screening the candidate. We're going to do a paper test. So we're going to take a look at their resume. What kind of experience do they have? Have they been in the real estate industry before? Is that important to us? We want to read over the resume and see if they would indeed be a fit. And then we'll take a moment to make that judgment call and schedule a phone call with the applicant. That phone call allows us to do just a little bit of probing in their resume and in their past to uncover any gaps and establish the track record. Remember, we're looking for a talented individual to join our organization, which means they have a track record of success. So some red flags that I might look at here is a very large number of job changes in a short amount of time. I'd be wary of titles with no description. I'd like to know a little bit about what you did. However, I'll use that phone call to ask questions. I may also use that phone call to establish other screening criteria. For instance, if I'm hiring an administrative candidate, they need to, out of the gate, in my world, have a certain level of knowledge as it relates to the tools they'll use in the job. They have to be familiar with how to operate a PC, a regular computer, right? My world doesn't run on Mac, it runs on PC, so that's really important. They have to be able to navigate through the G Suite, so they have to have a working knowledge of Google and Google Calendar and Google Documents and all of those pieces. And they have to have a working knowledge of social media. Somebody in my world, if they're going to be administrative, then they're going to have some tasks inside of social media as well, because that's a big part of all of our businesses. Everything else I'm willing to train. However, I'm not going to show you how to use Facebook. I don't have the time for that. And I know that personally, you're not the right fit to work with me if you don't have those skills. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you right on the phone, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me about your knowledge and proficiency with Facebook business pages. Have you used them before? What have you done with them? Tell me a bit about how you've worked in this tool before. So I'm going to ask some questions and probe where necessary.
Hey, Anna. When you ask that question on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the minimum acceptable number for you? Like, did it have to be a 10? Or does 7 work? Or
no, somebody could call themselves a 5, and then when they describe everything that they've done in that, cool. Okay, that sounds like you have a proficient working knowledge, and it's acceptable for me. Okay. Somebody could call themselves a 10, and then when they tell me all of the things that they've done, I'm like, okay, you were actually not as familiar with this tool as I would expect for a 10. So it's less about that number and more about the description. I think that that asking on a scale of 1 to 10 helps put people in that frame of mind where they're ranking their behavior. I generally expect people to rank themselves a little higher on a scale of 1 to 10 than they actually think they are, because they're selling themselves to me, right? This is a screening interview. They know that I'm calling to hire somebody.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Absolutely. I may ask a little bit about some of your past jobs too. So I see that you've been working with XYZ real estate team for the last 18 months. Tell me about what you loved working with them. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, so what are some of the things that you didn't like so much? Are you still working with that team? Okay. Tell me why. Right? Tell me why you're looking to make a change right now. That's one of the biggest questions that I use. It's really open, and it allows people to just kind of tell me what they're thinking. They'll extrapolate a little bit on their experience too, in my experience, right? I'm moving right now, or I just wanted to make a change. I'm listening for a couple of things here as well. I'm listening for somebody to have some energy and enthusiasm on the phone with me, because that's important in my organization. I'm looking for people who have energy and enthusiasm inside of my business. So I'm going to listen to that on the phone. I'm going to listen for some other things as well. Your phone etiquette, right? So if I call and you answer, hello, cool, we might be done here, right? I'll give you an opportunity for me to learn if I've caught you at a bad time. Yet I wouldn't want somebody answering the phone in my business that way. Especially if we have a scheduled phone call and you know that I'm going to be calling. I want you to have gone out of your way to make sure you can take my call, and that you are putting your best foot forward. It's very telling to me if somebody's not putting their best foot forward through the interview process. they may just be going through the motions and not really that interested in the opportunity. I'm also going to be listening for what people say about and how they describe their past experience and their past employers. You know, oh, I loved that job, but you know, the boss played favorites and I just wasn't his favorites, and it was so political, and you know, I worked so hard and never got recognized for it, and so I got this other job and the same thing happened again, and you know, it was just a really bad environment, or those kind of patterns. Now that can happen. People can have bad experiences. There are bad bosses out there, right? Those are real things, but a pattern of bad bosses or a pattern of bad experiences tells me that maybe there's a common denominator there. And it might be the applicant, right? So I'm going to look through those things. And one of the cool things is in the career visioning tools section on KW Connect, there's a resume review worksheet. I don't have it here. That you can actually go through during that phone call process. And so instead of having to think of questions, you can just go off that resume review worksheet and actually ask some of the questions that are on there and take notes. And then there's a stopping point after you fill out that resume review worksheet that gives you a couple of key things to consider before you move forward. Should you choose to move forward at this point, and you've identified that this person appears to actually have, you know, you've validated their resume to a point, right? And they appear to have the knowledge, the skills, and the track record, and the personality to move forward in your organization. You're going to start on the interview process. And as I mentioned before, there are 4 different in-person interviews that we're going to go through during this process. Each one's designed to take us to a different level, a different layer of understanding of how this candidate thinks and behaves, and allows us to determine whether or not, based on these interviews, we think they might be a good fit in our organization. Now, between every single one of these interviews, we're going to stop and we're going to evaluate what we've just learned from the previous interview, and we're going to make a decision as to whether or not we want to move forward. It's not necessary to go through every single one of these interviews with every single person. You might get through the first interview with them and choose not to move forward, and that's totally okay. Or you may get through the first one and decide that you need to at least go through the next interview process. And so these are all highly structured interviews. If you haven't been through one of these processes before, we'll talk a bit about those interviews today. We're going to give a high-level overview. But as an attendee at this, you have the opportunity for a one-on-one coaching session with me that will move you through these. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to do mini versions of each of these interviews so that you can have a better idea of how they actually play out in real life, and what you should, what I'm looking for, what I'm listening for, what I'm watching for, the notes that I'm going to take, and walk you through some of those pieces of the interview process. But here's the course of the interviews. The first is the job fit verification. And in this interview, we're actually going to use a behavioral assessment tool. The one that we'll talk about here is the Keller Personality Assessment, or the KPA. We're actually going to use that behavioral assessment tool to determine whether or not this person would indeed be a good fit for this role in this organization based upon their behavioral profile. Is this something that they would enjoy? Is this something that they would have high energy for? Is this something they're naturally inclined to be good at? Is this something that fits inside of their behavioral wheelhouse, right? If your job is an ISA or a telemarketer, and your person is has a low level of assertiveness and a low desire for social contact, then they're probably going to be really hard pressed to be a telemarketer or to be on the phone that much, right? It's going to take them really far outside of their comfort zone. And while that doesn't mean they won't be successful, it increases the likelihood that they will not be a good fit for that job. And we don't use this on its own. We would use this along with the other interviews and along with the conversation that happens throughout that verification. So this verification isn't something that happens, because a test tells us they're a good fit or not a great fit for that role. It's something that we do through a face-to-face conversation. So that we can then determine, based on their interpretation of this report and their verification process, do we really think that they would be a fit for this role? And if we're inclined to think that they are, then we go to the next interview. The next interview is the thought process interview, and this is the piece of the interview process that that feels the most like a job interview. It's a series of questions that's designed to get your applicant or your candidate talking about their past experience and sharing things with you in their own words. So you'll learn more about their past history inside of this thought process interview, as well as how they handle problems, the types of language that they use. Are they the action that they take? It's a little more like a regular job interview. The life story interview allows us to really dive deep into their resume. It's like a live interactive resume building session where you get to probe and ask questions and really gain understanding about their past professional experience, which leads you into the motivational interview, which allows you to obtain a different level of understanding about what drives this individual, what motivates them for life and for work, and what's their vision for their life is, to see if it aligns with yours. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that first interview, which is assessing and verifying their KPA. So when you take that KPA, there's two different versions. I would recommend that for somebody who is interviewing in your organization, they're going to take the full version of the KPA. The full version of the KPA takes between 45 minutes and an hour to complete. And I always tell people, it's going to feel a little bit like a test you cannot pass, right? And if you're anything like me, as soon as you're done, you're going to be asking to take it again because you know you can do better next time. Here's the thing about this: it's not an IQ test. It doesn't gauge somebody's intelligence, right? It's looking at both their behavioral styles, where they're naturally inclined to behave in life, and also their thinking traits, which includes things like problem solving. So for us to really be able to identify how you go about solving problems, well, naturally, I'd have to give you a problem to solve, right? So that's why it's going to feel a little bit like a test. There is a short version. There's like a 10-minute KPA that you can send out as well. And that 10-minute KPA doesn't give you any of the thinking trait. So it's not going to feel like a test when they're done, but it also doesn't gauge how somebody goes about solving problems and the way that they're able to work inside of systems in your business. So it's really important, particularly when you're making administrative and operational hires, that you do that full KPA for somebody. And if you know in the screening interview that you think that you want to move on to the next interview step, that's when I would ask that candidate to take the KPA. And I would say that our next step would be to meet one-on-one. And I use the KPA as a tool to facilitate the conversation between us. It allows us to get to know each other better. So I'm going to go ahead and send you a behavioral assessment that when we meet, we'll review together. So then they have that expectation. I would let them know to anticipate about an hour to take the assessment, and that they should take this at a time and in a place where they're free from distraction. Because it is initially interpreted by a computer, it's going to interpret everything that we're doing, including if we have to pause or take a break, or if we get distracted in the middle, and pieces like that. So we want to make sure that they're free from distraction. Things that can have an impact on the outcome of the KPA are going to be, in any behavioral assessment, are going to be life stress, right? Significant stressors in life. So these would be significant pieces like loss of a loved one, loss of a job, something traumatic, right? This could be having children, having a substantial, family crisis or something like that. Those could be the kinds of stress that could impact how the results of the KPA come out. And you'll know that, because what's going to happen is you're going to be face to face with somebody, and you're going to be verifying the KPA with them. And there's a series of questions when you get the report called the consulting guide. And you're going to actually just read this consulting guide with your candidate and get their input. And it even gives you some suggestions of what questions to ask. And then you're going to listen. And what you're going to listen for is how like them that thing is. So if you are face-to-face with somebody going through the consulting guide, and on every single thing they're saying, oh gosh, that doesn't really sound like me at all. In reality, I'm more like ... right? If that happens over and over again while you're reviewing this, then you might ask them if they've had some sort of significant life change recently. Is something going on in life that may, or was something going on when you were taking this KPA that distracted you or interrupted you, because it doesn't look like the system captured who you are. Now, I'll tell you, that's incredibly rare. I most of the time, and I've reviewed dozens of KPAs with people, maybe even over 100 at this point. It's a lot of KPAs. I've rarely seen one that absolutely is not a fit for that individual. And the few times where I've seen that, oh, this kind of doesn't sound like me, something was happening when they were taking the KPA. And so they were able to take it again. And on that follow-up KPA, it reflected who they were a lot better. So you're going to go through that consulting guide with the candidate, asking the questions that are there. And that's going to allow you to actually look at this graph, which is on the first portion of the KPA. And so what we've done is we've identified more than 40 different roles inside of the real estate world. And so we've been able to look at who are the top performers in some of these roles and what do their behavioral profiles look like. And so what you'll see in here is these gray bars that you see on the graph. That's actually the window of where the top performers in this role landed. Okay, and so that little black box is the individual who you're assessing. That's where they scored in each of those areas. And so it breaks down all of the different behavioral and thought process traits, and it overlays them for the job role that you're looking at. Now, just because somebody identifies here as a high, a medium, or a low match, it really doesn't matter. You're going to go through that verification process because there could be something that's just a little bit off, or the role you have in your organization might look a little different than these pieces. Here's the main thing. Just because somebody's identified here as being a high match for this job fit, it doesn't guarantee that they're actually going to be a top performer in this role. And somebody who's identified as a low match in this job fit, that also doesn't guarantee that they won't be a high performer in this role. It may mean that there are some ways that they have to modify their personality inside of this role to make it work. And there may be some role modification that works for that personality type to be able to make it work. So this isn't hard and fast. It just gives you a general idea. Ideally, what I actually like to do is I like to go through each of the traits to kind of see what impact that would have on the role and whether or not that's something that that I could accommodate either by making a role accommodation or is that something that really would be an impact in this. And inside of that job fit consulting guide, you'll actually get some questions to ask yourself where there's a mismatch. It will actually prompt you with some areas where that mismatch might be an issue in your hire, right? So make sure that you're reading that job fit guide as you're moving forward because it's got a lot of information in it. So if we get through that, the KPA and have identified that they are a good fit for this role and we'd like to move forward, we are going to, we could immediately move forward into the next interview if we'd like, or we can schedule it for another time. That other time should be soon, within the next day or two, because it's a key piece to building your relationship with this candidate to move you forward. So that next piece is the thought process interview. So there's 30 questions inside of this interview, and you're going to want to answer all of those questions. You're gonna listen for language that's contrary to your business, and you're gonna listen to language to victim language. Victim language would be people who are regularly blaming others or circumstances outside of their control. It tends to be fairly negative and is putting the responsibility for whatever's happened in their past experience onto others. You're going to want details on their answers and see if they're in alignment with your organization. So some interesting questions inside of this thought process interview that allow you to do that is describe for me a time when you were trained really well. And then the follow-up question to that is tell me about 2 or 3 times when you weren't trained really well. And what impact did that have on your business? And you're going to want to just work through that question, because here's the piece. If what they said wasn't good training is exactly what you have in mind for training inside of your organization, then you might want to probe a little further there. Tell me about a time when you were managed really well, and tell me about a time when you were managed really poorly. And when they say I was managed really poorly when and you're like, hey, that's exactly what I'm planning on doing, you're probably going to want to probe a little deeper there to see if you guys are in alignment. And there are several questions that are set up inside of this thought process interview that allow you to see if you're on the same page with somebody, that allow you to see if they're going to be in alignment with what you're doing. And then, listen to how their answers are consistent with how they've interviewed so far. Somebody who you're going to want to go back to that resume review. You're going to want to dip back into that KPA and keep those fresh in your mind, or have your notes handy while you're going through the thought process. Because if they say something that's contrary to what they said before, you're just going to want to probe a little deeper. What is that? Is it a situational thing? Is it really more one way than the other? Is it the way that these questions were phrased? You're just going to want to dig a little deeper. Or are they kind of gaming the system? Some people are just really, really good interviewers, and they'll tell you everything that you want to hear. The brilliant thing about this thought process interview is it's some very unexpected questions. So people really can't prepare for this like they'd prepare for another interview. So you're going to have a better chance of getting their authentic self and not their their interview game, So should you determine at that thought process interview that you're ready to move forward, there is a hard stop there that allows you to take some time. Do not go into the life story interview immediately afterwards. Wait at least a day before you go into this next interview. And their life story interview is going to be something that is participative and interactive. You're going to use either a piece of paper or a notepad that they can see, or even a flip chart like I have behind me, and go through that that life story interview. That life story interview is simple questions like, tell me about that job, and what did you learn? What did you win? What were your wins? And then what happened next? Right? What was the next role? And you're going to look at those pieces. Look for patterns of behavior inside of this. How do these people define success? So there's an actual question in this interview. Tell me about your wins during this time. Tell me about your highs and your lows. And so you'll get to hear in their words what constitutes a high and a low inside of their work experience. You're going to listen for ownership and for victim language again here. You're going to listen for responsibility. You're going to listen for them to have that ownership over their results. And then once again, this is another verification point. Does their life story match their resume? Because what we're doing is we're really going to be building a resume together here on a flip chart. And then, is this opportunity the next logical step in their career path? I'll tell you, I hit this point while I was hiring somebody once who, going into this interview, I was certain was going to be the candidate for this role. I really thought that they had everything nailed down. And I realized during the life story that I had created their job description for them. I invented experience based on some of our conversations and the way I interpreted their resume. I invented experience that they didn't actually have. So this life story interview allowed us to actually redirect what happened inside of that interview process, right? So it's a very, very important step here. Now, when we look at these interviews, the thought process interview and the life story interview, I would say essential for everybody in your organization. If there were pieces, if I were making an agent hire and there were pieces that I paid more attention to and pieces I paid less attention to, I might pay less attention to these pieces. These pieces are going to be essential for that administrative person in your business. However, I think that a lot of people get into real estate as a secondary career, or a third career or a fifth career or whatever. It's usually not their first career. And sometimes their past experience isn't necessarily going to show up in the real estate world, right? So while the life story is important and it's going to be a great relationship builder, I wouldn't put as much weight on it as I might that KPA conversation. And likewise with the thought process interview, for me, that might be, something that kind of maybe rules you out of coming into my business if I realize we're really misaligned as far as culture. But I'm not going to take a lot of stock in that because your real estate experience might look a little different. However, I would say still both important interviews. The last interview in this is the motivational interview. Now, if you finished up the life story interview and you know you're ready to move forward, you can go right into the motivational interview at the same time. Each of these interviews, by the way, takes about an hour to go through this structured interview. So if you choose to do the 2 interviews that you can back to back, that would be a 2-hour block over the course of 2 separate days if you wanted to go through the whole thing. Sometimes these interviews do take a little bit longer depending upon how deep you get into those conversations. So be prepared for that as well. But their motivational interview is a great way to be able to see your alignment, right? Is their future in alignment with your business, right? If I'm hiring an independent, or if I'm hiring a sales agent for my team, and their vision is next year, they want to, they want to be a rainmaker on their own team, selling 100 units alone. Well, I need to know that right off the bat. And does that path on my team help them get to where they want to go in the future? And that's not right or wrong. It's something that you have to determine, right? If I'm applying for a job of a sales agent now, and in the future, oh man, I can't tell you, I'm really looking forward to doing some marketing and putting items in the MLS. And one day I aspire to be the operations manager on a team. Does your sales agent position naturally lead somebody into an operations manager position, right? Now that's just kind of an extreme example. One role wouldn't naturally lead to another, but you want to be able to hear that from somebody. And in this, you're going to be able to have a safe conversation about compensation as well, which isn't something that's come up in this interview process yet. When you're getting candidates to this opportunity, you'll probably have to advertise with a pay window, right? This role is, between $20 and $24 an hour, or this opportunity for the right buyer's agent could bring them $100,000 of income a year, right? But here you really need to find out is whether or not that income works in their world. If you're paying an admin $20 an hour, and based on their motivational interview, that the next highest paying job is something that they're going to leave for because $20 an hour doesn't support their lifestyle, then that's something that you're going to find out here as well, and whether or not you can work inside of that. What you're really going to be able to do here is see if their future career path is in alignment with what you've built inside of your world, and further determine whether or not this is a talented individual who's going to stay inside of your organization for an extended period of time. Once you've completed the interview stage, you're going to get perspective from others. And so you'll do that a couple of different ways. The first is with a group interview. So you'll invite your team, so others in your organization or others who you really trust, whom are familiar with your organization, to meet with the candidate in a social setting. And they're going to get to know the candidate. This is not an intense grilling process. This really should feel much more casual. And really what your team is going to determine is whether or not they fit in with the team, right? So some important things to note here is you are not at the group interview. You want to see how this person shows up with the others that they're going to be working with. Or if you don't have a team yet, if this is your first hire, these are going to be people, colleagues whom are familiar with your business or familiar with your culture, so that they can get a good feel for whether or not this person's going to work really well with you or not. And so after that group interview, they're going to share with you their experience. Typically an hour. You probably don't want to do this in your office. If you want to do this at a coffee shop or something like that, that works. References. Now, references, it's really far down the process, yet sometimes if I get an inkling further up in the process that this could be somebody who I really want to work with, I'll ask them for references early, and I'll get started on that, because the references can, in my opinion, kind of make or break that candidate depending on what others say about them. So there's a reference guide that comes in the packet along with all of these interviews. The guides for all of the interviews are in there, but there's a reference guide in there, and that reference check guide gives you some telephone scripts of questions that you're going to ask the candidate's references. So your candidate is going to provide you with 3 references, and then you're going to ask each of those references on the phone with them, who else do you know that can provide me a different experience with this candidate? My experience is that sometimes I have to reassure the reference that the candidate has given me permission to ask this question, and they do. They'll actually sign off a sheet that says you can do this. And so now I'm going to get somebody that the candidate didn't actually refer to me. They didn't actually give me their name and phone number. This person probably didn't get that prep call that says, hey, I'm applying for a new job. It's really important that you say nice things. So I'm going to get this person who's been unprepared for this conversation. And then I'm going to ask that person who else they know, and I'm going to go 3 deep on these 3 candidates. So I want to talk to 9 people about this candidate before I go further. And I'm going to listen for consistencies. I'm going to listen to see what are the things that show up consistently in this, what are some negative things and what are some positive things, but what's really consistent in there, and is there anything I need to watch for? In the reference check script, there's actually a question that says, I forget the exact wording, but it's something along the lines of, in this role, I'm looking for a candidate, I'm looking for somebody with a high, fill in the blank, with a high sense of urgency. I'm looking for a candidate who is really socially outgoing. I'm looking for a candidate who builds great relationships with others. Based on your experience, how does this person achieve that? Can you share with me some examples of a time where they've built great relationships with others, where they've displayed a high sense of urgency? So you can get really specific about what you're looking at there and look for consistencies inside of that. And listen between the lines. What happens when you're calling these references is just as important as what doesn't happen. If you've had to leave somebody 3 voicemails and 2 text messages, and maybe you even emailed them and they're not getting back to you, well, they're probably not very excited about what they have to say. If you've had a great experience with someone, you're usually really excited to share that. If you haven't had a great experience with somebody, you may be a little more hesitant about that. You may feel that there's some integrity issues because you don't want to say bad things about somebody, yet you're not going to lie on the phone either. Right? So it's really telling if you can't get a hold of people sometimes. I mean, of course, there's exceptions to that. Yet you want to go in between the lines. You want to listen for people's tone and the emotion behind the way they're talking, because they may say, yes, I would work with that person again. And maybe that means yes, they would. Or did they say, yeah, I'd work with them again. It was fine. There were no problems there. She did her job. She showed up every day. I have no complaints. That's way different than, yeah, I would totally work with her again. She went above and beyond. She was always there when she needed to. In fact, I'm looking for an opportunity to work with her right now. Interesting. She's looking for a job, right? So what are people saying about her? What's the tone and the cadence in which they're saying? What does that really mean? And then prepare all of your interviews and have a trusted colleague or a coach or a consultant, have somebody else dive into this with you. It can be a group of people or it can be an individual, and have them poke holes in this candidate. Ask questions that maybe you haven't. Really get somebody who can challenge your thinking on moving this person forward, and be prepared to defend your candidate. Go into this conversation fighting for them to get this job. You'll know when you're prepared for the defense and you're willing to fight for that person to have that role. You'll know that you've got the right person. And then in that defense, if you've identified any red flags with your partner there, or the committee, if you're doing this via committee, if you've identified any red flags, you're going to want to keep those on the radar for that 30, 60, 90-day process if they don't stop you from moving forward. And then you need to get full commitment on the role. So you're going to have a conversation about mutual expectations. There's a guide for this inside of the career consultation guide through that comes with the KPA. So when somebody gets a KPA, the guide for every single one of these interviews is right inside of that. So it's really easy to be able to move through that process, and you don't have to look for anything else. You're going to have a mutual expectations conversation. This is how you win with me. How do I win with you? This is how you lose with me. How do I lose with you? And other conversations, other questions that will allow you guys to get on the same page about what it's going to be like to work with one another. You're going to review that job profile and the job performance expectations, right? So in this role, you're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and I expect you to accomplish A, B, and C in your first 30, 60, and 90 days. Are we on the same page? Is this still the job that you thought you signed up for initially, right? Because you may have gone a period of time in between them seeing this job profile and actually getting to the end of these interview consultations, right? You're going to review with them the plan that you have for their first 30, 60, and 90 days and explain how you'll hold them accountable and what happens during that period. Give them an opportunity to ask any questions that they have, and then set them up for success. That's when you'll actually extend an offer for the job, come to terms on compensation, and plan for their first day of work. When will they come? What will their orientation process be like? What can they expect? What will they bring with them? And so all of those pieces, including a templated offer letter, are in that CV packet. So this is a process, right? And it gives you the leverage to identify the right talent for your growing business. That's what's so important in this. Should we shortcut this process or decide to just get in business with a body and not somebody, then we can really be setting our business up for some roadblocks and for a much slower growth trajectory than what we would otherwise look at. So keep those pieces in mind, and I'm going to go ahead and say, let's open up the mics. I'd love to hear some ahas or questions. What do you guys think?
And I've got one question.
Yeah.
So when you start going down this road with the candidate, and you were talking about the amount of time that you'll spend in the 4 hours, roughly 4 1-hour interviews and such. At any point in that, do you let the candidate know that how intense this is and what the time involvement is going to be to get through the interview process? Or do you just do it and kind of wait and see how they respond to it?
I do it and wait and see how they respond to it. If I feel pretty confident that we're going to at least make it through a little bit of the process here, several interviews, then I might let them know that, you know what, this role is so important to our organization that we're going to take our time to make sure that it's the right fit, not just for us, but also for you. I respect you enough to not shortcut your opportunity to learn if this is the right role for you. So know that I won't be making a decision overnight about this, and that it's a process. I do let people know it's a process. I don't let people know how many interviews are in the process, because if I choose to exit after the first interview, and I've already told you that this is a 4-interview process, then that makes that conversation a little harder.
Sure,
right?
that makes sense. Yep.
And there are scripts inside of that that career consulting guide too, right? On how to exit with class, how to get out of business with people, should you need to, how to get out of business, how to get out of the process with people, that you can use either in person or, via electronic communication, text or email, if that's appropriate for your relationship with them.
Cool. I have one more question.
Yeah.
So with the team meeting today, the ALC stand up and this, are you exhausted of talking yet?
I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, where I don't think I have any major talking events. So yeah, I've been talking a lot today.
I would say you are.
Oh, I get a taste of, I guess, what Jake goes through on a regular basis. It's a lot of talking that those guys do in the bold world, man.
Yeah, but he loves it though.
Yes.
Right?
Are you saying I don't?
If I had to vote, I would say no. Anna probably doesn't love that part.
Oh, no, I do. I really love this part. I really, really love this part.
Fair enough.
I wish there was a little more interaction inside of this, especially when I'm using the Zoom on the PowerPoint like this, because I really don't see everybody's faces, and it's hard to gauge everybody's reaction and feel like we're actually connected when I'm looking at my computer screen. I think that's the piece of this that's probably the hardest, is not getting that energy feedback from the people in the audience, Yep,
I do.
Yeah.
I have a question. How far would you go on this with someone that was virtual? Would you do the whole thing, or?
No, I'd probably make some pretty significant adaptations with somebody who's virtual. But that would really depend on the level of that relationship. If I intend on hiring a virtual assistant for life, I might go through the whole thing. Yet I don't know that the motivation interview would be as important to me with a virtual assistant. I don't know that the life story interview would be as important with a virtual assistant. The thought process would be, and the KPA definitely would be. Depending upon what else is happening in my business, would they need a group interview? Are they going to have a lot of interaction with people outside of me? Virtual assistants can do a lot. If you're going to be heavily involved with my team, if you're going to be leading other people in my organization, then a group interview might make sense. But if it's just going to be you and I working together, for an extended period of time, I might not need a group interview. I wouldn't skip the defense. I wouldn't skip references, except for I would specifically want references of people they've worked with in the past, of other real estate agents who they've worked with. Expectations conversation, you have to have that with everybody. That's a huge piece of this. You're guaranteed to get started in the wrong direction if you skip that conversation before you get into business with somebody. You have to be on the same page. And I might not care about a resume. There might not be a screening process. It might be, VA company, give me your top 3 people. Here's what I'm looking for. And then I'm going to do a behavioral tool with all 3 of them, and, maybe a thought process interview, and pick the winner, so I'd probably make some amendments to what I'm doing in this. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, since this isn't the official KW sanctioned career visioning class, I can tell you that. Instead of just stick to the guide, do exactly what it says in here with everybody, I'd use my judgment. And that's one of the places where I think there's a judgment call. I probably wouldn't stick to the whole process. I would say, depending on agents I'm bringing into my organization too, I may not be concerned about as much of this. If it's a showing assistant who I'm really comfortable deciding whether or not we're going to be in business long term while you're on the job, then I might not push as far. But if I'm hiring a showing assistant that I want someday for that person to grow up to be the lead buyer's agent, then I'm not going to skip a step, and I'm going to go deep and do a full KPA. So it just depends on the level of relationship I really want to have with that individual, I think. I'll tell you, even on the market center level, for an MCA hire, I don't skip anything, and I pay extra special attention to certain steps. But if I'm hiring a director of first impressions, there are some pieces that are less important here. That motivational interview doesn't really impact us as much. That's probably one of the big ones in there if I'm looking at a director of first impressions or someone like that whom should they be a good fit, I'd love to be in business with them for a while, but I'm not they're not going to be an immediate direct report to me, and they're not going to be my business partner. That's another piece as well. If you're going through this interview process, this person should be directly reporting to you. Angela, should you hire an admin to your business, and then you're going to hire a third person to your business, and they're going to report to your admin needs to be highly involved in this process. I say highly involved because they have to earn the right to take this over. Right? So you're still going to be owning this process because it's still your business until that admin has proven that they have mastered this and can hire somebody on their own, right? But they need to be highly involved in this. So yeah.
The next question is, how long does this take you typically? I know how long it took me and you, and I know I talk a lot. How long does it take normally?
It really depends. It really, really depends. Typically, I can get through this whole process with somebody if I'm really focused on it and have only one or two candidates. I can go from start to finish in like 2 weeks. Ideally, I want to have more than one or two candidates, and so I kind of batch this. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of spend a period of time collecting applicants or finding candidates, going through that selection process, and then I might move you through KPA and motivation interview and stop there while I'm taking other people through motivation and KPA. The thought process and KPA. Those are the two that go together. The thought process and KPA, and then kind of stop there. And then, in this process, it's not uncommon if I have multiple people in the process, it's not uncommon to maybe go a couple of weeks in between that thought process interview and the life story interview as I'm kind of batching those and deciding who I want to move forward with and who I don't. And a lot of that is just about time management and being able to actually do that. Because of the time commitment, I try to I like to move people similarly through the process. In similar time frames, right? Like I want to have 2 or 3 people at any given time in like the same stage, as opposed to taking one person all the way through and getting past the group interview and calling references and then having somebody all the way back at the KPA process. Now that does happen. It does happen, but it's not my preference. And what tends to happen is that then I'll pause with this person who's super far in the process, and I'll try and get this person caught up. So there can be some gaps inside of there. I don't know if that answered your question. There's not really an average. If I'm moving real fast with somebody, then we can be at a job offer in 2 weeks.
Okay, and then when you're waiting in the batch process, like you were saying, do you just tell them you'll call them to schedule another interview because maybe you haven't decided that they will be moving on?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll typically use a script like, right now I'm interviewing lots of candidates for this role. And once we've closed this round of interviews, I'll be in touch to schedule the next. Yeah, something that keeps them on. And then, if I know that I've got some catch up time with somebody, I might go a week without that call and then call and schedule an interview with you a week out so that I have a gap and we don't have a ton of, dead air in between there, because this is really a competitive environment as well. If you're looking at one opportunity, you might be looking at more. So I want to make sure that I've still got you interested in my opportunity in between then.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, it looks like our group has gotten a little bit smaller. Do you guys have any more questions or ahas or comments or anything? Cool.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It takes me a second to unmute on my iPad. So sorry I popped off for a second. I was having technical difficulties and then popped back on with my iPad. So no real questions, but just wanted to say thank you for spending the time to do this. I actually talked to Donna yesterday because I had a question for her. And though I'm not in love with the reason that we're doing a lot of the Zoom meetings, I will say that sitting here in Washington, it makes me feel like part of the office again. So I kind of like these Zoom meetings.
Adrian, you will never not be part of the office. I know you can always feel like it. You are.
I just feel more
agree.
with these video trainings and conferences and stuff. I feel like I'm not away from you guys.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
That's awesome.
I think what we anticipated happening, I think probably will, is we were kind of forced into this. We closed the office to the public, right? We're not working there anymore, as you can tell, right? And so we were kind of forced into this, but really early on realized that this is probably something that's going to stick around. This is just going to be a new way that we do business. And I'm getting kind of comfortable working from home. I don't know.
We find out who's got office space in their house and who doesn't, right? See a lot of agents on these Zooms where they've got computers set up in their kitchen. Clinton was in his garage this morning, so I don't know if he got in trouble with Elizabeth or what. Like, I don't know if he got locked out or she was like, you need to social distance your butt out in the garage. Or, I don't know.
That's funny. I use my backyard. I love it outside.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it outside.
Yeah.
This has been a great opportunity to be outside.
Phone calls, so. Thank you again, Anna, for the whole day. Go rest your boys.
Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate you guys. And this is our first time doing it. So doing this, if you have any feedback, if there's pieces of this class that didn't flow well or didn't make sense, or you think we missed, because I think all of you have been to CV before, or I know Ange has been there with me recently. Or if we covered too much. We were right on time. However, I was cognizant of that time. Well, right on time. No, we ended pretty late. So I started talking faster. I think I might have tried to jam a little too much in here. Alas, what can you do? So we'll love your feedback. You're welcome to.
You do a 2-hour class like this with this much information, Anna. It's essentially impossible to get the pace and the timing right the first time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did great. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, cool. Ladies, stay safe.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you for everything.
Bye.
Appreciate y'all.